Hafide, and welcome to another episode of My Story. I'm your host, Janella Carrera. In this episode, we bring you the story of Jolene Mpinko, a heroic and truly inspiring woman who's defied her doctor's predictions not once, but twice, even while pregnant. She's a living miracle and our first guest who's taking a holistic approach to her treatment. So stay right there. When we come back, we'll introduce you to this incredible woman. Hafide, and welcome back to another episode of My Story. I'm your host, Janella Carrera. And joining me today via Skype, all the way from Georgia, is former Guam resident Jolene Mpinko. And she's here right now. You can see her. Hi, Jolene. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great.
Okay, thank you so much again for joining us. You have a very interesting story, very inspiring story. But let's talk about your roots. You're a former Guam resident, and you left quite a time ago. Can you tell us a little bit about your life here in Guam? What school you went to? What family you're with, and all of that.
Sure. Actually, my dad was in the military, in the Army, so I wasn't raised there.
Okay.
He actually got out right before I went into high school. So I did get to go all 4 years in high school. I graduated from JFK.
Oh, okay. Go Islanders! I'm an alumni too, so.
Yay! So 96 is when I graduated, and I continued to stay there. My parents moved here to Georgia. I loved it in Guam, and in 2000, I got married to my husband, Ray Mpinko. And 2 weeks after we got married, and he was raised there. He's from Santa Rita, and we left and came to Georgia to be here with my parents and my siblings.
Okay.
And we haven't left since then. So we've been here for 17 years.
Wow. Okay. And so you have 7 children. You and your husband raised 7 children. Congratulations. That's quite an amazing thing. So tell us about, you're on this show obviously because of something that has to do with cancer. And you mentioned earlier when we were talking that you never felt any symptoms. Tell us about how you eventually found out and were diagnosed.
Okay, so I actually started to know that I was struggling with my immune system probably about 11 years ago when I was in my late 20s. And as soon as I realized that I was struggling with that, I did try and find natural ways to get rid of some of the symptoms I had with that. And once I started to feel better, I cut some of what I was eating, didn't cut everything. I just was on my merry way. And I didn't ever have a problem with that until each time after I gave birth, but I always was able to get myself back into a balance. And then in October of 2015, my husband was in this room checking his heart rate. He wanted to calculate his max heart rate. And I said, oh, let me do mine too. And I checked my pulse. I felt a lump there. You couldn't see anything at the time. And it was, and I immediately got on the phone with one of my doctor friends and said, I have a hard lump in my neck. Should I worry? She said, no, you get swollen lymph nodes for a cold. And I, thought, okay, well, I didn't feel bad. And so I just kind of forgot about it.
It wasn't painful.
No, I would never have felt it. I mean, it was just by coincidence that my husband was doing it and I wanted to do it too. And so that month I found out I was pregnant. So I just attributed it to my immune system doing its wacky thing when it's pregnant. And I just didn't pay it any attention. And it wasn't until January of last year, which was 2016, 3 months later, where I saw a story of my friend that had passed away at 37 of breast cancer. And I just thought, wow, she was too young to die.
Yeah.
And so at that moment, and I think it was the Holy Spirit just said, you need to get yourself checked. And so I waited to the end of that month. That was the beginning of the month. I waited to the end of that month.
The lump was still there that whole time. It stayed.
Yes, but it wasn't as visible as it is now. Maybe it was a little bit more visible than when I first felt it in October. And when I went to my OB, I said, "Do you think I should check this out?" And she said, "Definitely." And so I immediately went, got it biopsied, and it came back positive that it was cancer. But that was not the primary location. So then the next thing was to find the primary location. I was 3 months pregnant. So there are very limited things that they can do
Yeah.
while being pregnant. And so I had a CT scan, and it was funny because knowing that it was cancerous, they said it could be head and neck, it could be thyroid, it could be breast, it
Hmm.
could be lung. And I remember asking the general surgeon, I said, "Well, which one do I want?" And she said thyroid, and I was like, "Okay, we want thyroid." So, it didn't necessarily come back that way. Um, and she said, "Actually, I'm quite surprised. You have nasal pharyngeal carcinoma,
Wow.
which here in the United States, um, it's only about 10% of the cancers here. So it's considered a little bit more rare here than it might be over there
Hmm.
in Asia." So I went for a biopsy for that, and it was confirmed that it was nasopharyngeal. So it is all the way in the back of my nose where it meets my throat.
Ah. Wow.
I started, of course, seeking advice from some doctors, and
Yeah.
the doctor said, "Absolutely, right now you need to get yourself into radiation and chemo." And
And
I
you were
said, "Well,
pregnant, of course.
I was pregnant. I was 3 weeks pregnant. I mean, 3 months pregnant,
Hmm.
and my OB knew that termination was not an option
That
um,
was your rule, like from the get go, no
from the get go.
termination. You'd
Right.
rather
Well,
you want to
but I
keep this
had
pregnancy.
right. So um, I ended up not seeing that doctor. I went to another doctor, the one who biopsied me, and then was going to get set up with some cancer doctors through them. I decided not to go that route either.
Hmm.
Nobody was telling me the news I wanted to hear, which was the option. The only option they gave me was um, chemo and radiation. So then I ended up seeing a team of doctors at our cancer center here, um, and they all took a look at me. Then they all go and convene. Then they all come back and say, "Well, this is our plan." And so um, surgery wasn't an option. And it's funny because they said, honestly, you're the first person that we've ever dealt with that has nasopharyngeal and is pregnant." And
Wow.
before they said anything else, I said to them, "Termination is not an option." And so then they kind of swallowed hard and said, "Okay." Um, and they all sat down with me individually to give me their plan. The oncologist, um, told me that, "Don't worry, I would be comfortable in chemo." They wouldn't be able to do the chemo that they normally use for this type of cancer because I was pregnant, so they were
Right.
going to have to use the chemo, for breast cancer patients, which is a totally different cancer.
Hmm.
Um, and then he said, and when you do radiation, radiation splatters. So the radiation doctor will build this contraption around your stomach so that way no radiation falls onto you.
Wow.
And and I and I just kind of looked at him and said, "Thank you for sharing." And my husband and we said, of course, we want to pray about it. But before letting me leave, they said, "Let's at least just get you into an appointment for you to sit in the chemo chair this week."
Hmm.
And I said, "Well, I don't think I want to go that route." And they said, "Well, let's just get you an appointment, anyways." And so they put me in an appointment. We left. My husband and I prayed about it. And after praying about it, we decided that that was not the route for us. And we chose not to do chemo and radiation. And we chose to go the holistic route. And we were told that that was not a wise choice
Hmm.
and that I would make it to delivery. Um, Even if I tried to deliver early, um, we wouldn't make it.
So they're
Neither.
basically giving you almost like a death sentence.
Yes, they did. And they
Wow.
actually said to me, I said, "Well, I'm not willing to do anything that's going to harm. I know what chemo and radiation does. I'm not willing to, if you're going to tell me that being pregnant, I can't take an ibuprofen, or I shouldn't take an ibuprofen, but you're going to give me a chemo that's not even the one that you use for this
Right.
type of kind of do trial and error, like a little experiment. Um, Ibuprofen, chemo, yeah, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
No, I'm not doing it." And
Definitely.
I was told that you got to kind of do the lesser of the leave was I still had 6 other kids to think about.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so I said, well, God's on my side. So I'm gonna go with this.
Yeah. So tell us about your decision. I'm sure that, I mean, your determination to stay on this path, and to, of course, keep your baby and try to stay as healthy as possible, positive as possible. But I'm sure with that came also some concerns, some worries, some fears. Were you ever scared at all that what the doctors were predicting might come true, that you may not make it to the end of your pregnancy?
I would be lying if I said that it didn't at least cross my mind.
Hmm.
But I already knew. I had already been introduced into the world of your body can and will work for you, and it's a miracle, that if you give it the right stuff, it will do good things for you.
Hmm.
And I think that really started, like I said, when I was in my late 20s, when I started having issues. And some of the things that they were offering me was to suppress my immune system. And I thought, wait a second, if you suppress my immune system to fix this one problem, then I'm susceptible to everything else. And I chose to say no to that. And I found a way that naturally could fix my issue. So I think that was kind of like an introduction for me
Hmm.
into your body, if you do the right things for it, can work for you.
Hmm.
And so I it wasn't foreign to me, and I knew what chemo and radiation does and could do. And being that I was pregnant, um, like I said, if I can't take ibuprofen, but yet you can give me those chemicals, I if I I may help myself, but at the same time, if I make it through this and he makes it through this, then he may be susceptible to lifelong problems, and then
Hmm.
that'll just be another that not only I have to deal with, but now the problem is with him, and he's going to have to deal with those things
Right.
lifelong. And I don't think I just wasn't for that, and so it wasn't hard for me to make the decision. It was actually very, very easy,
Yeah.
and I have a, I mean, I have a rock solid, faith in God, and said, God, if you want me to go that route, I absolutely will, but you're going to have to bang me on the head, write me a letter, tell me that that's the way you want me to live.
Right.
And so, but if I could go this other route, please give me peace about it, open the doors, send me the right people, send me the right information,
Hmm.
and send me the resources. And I kid you not, the doors opened really wide,
Hmm.
and it just went boom, boom, boom. So I didn't really have second thoughts
Yeah.
or fear. No.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to cut to break, and when we come back, we'll learn more, a little bit more about your pregnancy. You're here today, so obviously we know you've made it. But before we go to break, I'm sorry, before we go to that segment, we're going to go to a quick break, and we'll be right back here on My Story. Hafade, and welcome back to My Story. I'm your host, Janella Carrera. And again, joining us in today's episode is Jolene Ampinko, all the way from Georgia, via Skype. Hi again, once again. Thank you again for joining us. So before we went to break, we talked a little bit about your diagnosis, how you found out about it, and your decision. You found out you were pregnant, and your decision to defy your doctor's orders, not go with chemo or radiation, and to keep your pregnancy, despite being told that you may not even survive this pregnancy. Um, and so I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, what happened to your pregnancy. Can you tell us, continue with your story on your pregnancy journey while battling cancer?
Well, I dove right into research. First I dove right into prayer.
Hmm.
First and foremost, prayer. And success is first one in the mind, right? And so I truly believe that if you're going to win at anything, it's a mindset, and you have to see it won already, and put your faith in that. And you can't really sway back and forth with worry and doubt, because worry and faith don't live in the same box.
Hmm.
And so I chose to go the faith route and just say, I am going to win this, and nobody wants to live more than I do, and most especially bring in a healthy baby. And so I went straight into research, and um, I sought out a lot of people. I sought out a lot of information, And I just did everything that I could think of in learning the holistic ways, because there are people who go that route
Hmm.
and who have had a lot of success. So I sought those people out. If I had to drive hours away, if I had to fly, if I had to, Skype someone who was more educated, who had success with that, I did all of those things. And I really sought out the information as if my life depended on it, because it did.
It did, yeah.
And so I was open and I was willing to, if it made sense to me, to try those things. And the hard thing is, because it's not the traditional route, none of it is covered by the insurance.
Mm.
So
Wow.
everything is really expensive and out of your pocket. And I just knew it was the route for me when that started to, when we were starting to have to throw hundreds of dollars here and hundreds of dollars here and thousands of dollars there, when every single time, whatever we needed in the thing that I wanted to try, the resources always showed up by some way. And it always, I believe, truly was just God.
Hmm.
And so, um, what did I do? Um, I cut everything. The moment I got my diagnosis, I called someone in California, a doctor that I knew that was really into nutrition and had really counseled other people how to help their bodies. I called him first and foremost, and I said, "Here's what I have. What do I do?" And the first thing he said is cut
Mm.
sugar, cut that. So I took the whole list. And when he said, "Cut this, and this," I said, "Well, what do I eat?" So he said, "You eat what the body, what serves the body." And so I went full force into nothing entered my mouth unless it served my body,
Hmm.
and which mainly greens and greens and more greens and more greens.
Hmm.
And so everything organic. I didn't for several months. I didn't eat meat. I do eat meat now, but only if it's grass fed. And I do a lot of therapies. There are a lot of things you can do, especially if you have cancer. Usually, you have an overload of toxins.
Hmm.
So, really got into all the different ways you could detoxify your body, and there are many ways. And any way that they said to, I did it and I tried it with no hesitation.
Hmm. So
And
you carried your baby to full term.
mhm,
And
well,
go ahead.
37, 37 weeks.
37 weeks. That's close
Yeah,
enough. I mean, that's
yeah.
for someone who has, who was diagnosed with cancer and told that you may not even survive pregnancy to deliver at 37 weeks. Did you deliver naturally, or did you have to do a C-section?
No, I went naturally.
Wow, you are so amazing. So I'm assuming your baby boy was born healthy and no complications, no issues whatsoever.
He's perfect. Oh my gosh, he's beautiful. We were in room 202, and he was born at 2:02 in the morning.
Wow, that is so amazing. So after your baby was born, most people would assume that now that you've delivered and chemo and radiation are an option for you to take, most people would assume that you went ahead and did it anyway. But you decided to stick with your holistic approach to beating this. Tell us about that decision.
Well, initially when I was pregnant, because we couldn't go the normal route of monitoring, I was okay with doing MRIs with no contrast. And so after having my first one and then having my second one, no growth, obviously something I was doing was working, because my doctor, the first thing he said to me when we sat in the room for him to go over my results is, "You must have a million prayers." And I said, I think I do. And I'm going to call all of them and tell them not to stop praying. So to all my prayer warriors, I said, I think there's prayers from around the world. And that was, including Guam. It is on the other side of the world. And then the third MRI, no growth. Fourth MRI, no.
Wow.
And so when I did deliver, um, he says to me, I can't, I can't believe you're sitting in my chair. You're a true miracle. It's a miracle you're sitting here.
Yeah.
But no time to waste. So we're going to get you started on chemo and radiation. And I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. I mean, obviously, I must have been doing something right.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's prayer or it's the therapies or it's the food,
Mm-hmm.
um, whatever it is, I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to continue on this route. And he looked at me and he kind of like paused. I know he wanted to really not um, tear me down, but
Hmm.
he said to me, you know, I work with this day in and day out. And yes, it's a miracle that you're still sitting here, but that doesn't mean you'll stay if you don't go this route. And I said, well, go back through with me what it's going to entail. And he did. And I said, yeah, all those things just don't sound like I want to go through that.
Hmm.
And I feel fantastic. Um, and so you're going to take me from feeling fantastic to not feeling so great. Um, and I just didn't want to do radiation to the face and the neck and all of that. And I
Yeah.
know what chemo does to your ears. And he said, well, you know what? I hadn't pushed at this point, but I'd hate to, lose you and say I should have pushed harder. So I'm pushing. And I said, well, thank you, but no, thank you. I'm going to pray about it. And I asked him, I said, well, what are the success rates? He said, well, you have about a 68% success rate after 5 years that you'll still be alive. And I said, well, that's closer to 50 than it is 100.
Hmm.
So that's not sounding good to me. And I said, well, what's the 10-year success rate? He said, well, we don't have those numbers.
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, I plan on living more than 5 years. And you don't have 10-year success rates to me. It's just really, I'm just not interested. And
Yeah.
so I left. I did really feel broken because, you have to really, one of the things I do is I really protect my mind and who I'm around.
Hmm.
And when people that you're making the wrong choice and you got to think about your kids and you got to think about your husband and, that you're going to die. Um, I left and I really did have to build myself back up. I did cry.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Straight to church. And after I was done at church for about an hour, I was back on track and I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And honestly, I told him, I said, I'm not going to come back here to see you until I'm all good and clean. And the last time I've seen him was on last July. Um, Honestly, he did send me a letter. I think it was in August, maybe September,
Hmm.
um, telling me that I would meet my demise within a year because I chose not.
Wow.
I still have the letter and I'm going to print that up. And as soon as I
Wow.
your mark, I'm gonna maybe mail it back to him. I don't know.
Wow. So he told you you wouldn't last a year. Basically, he
He said it
said by next
was
July, 2018. Or I'm sorry, was it 2018 or 2017?
2017. Yes,
Oh my
yes.
God, and you're here.
I'm here. I'm here.
Wow, you are so amazing. I'm getting goosebumps right now. Wow, this
God
is
is
just truly inspiring. Now, you've decided to take a holistic approach. Have you met any other people who did survive past the 5 year mark or the 10-year mark who took this same approach that you're taking as well?
not with this particular type of cancer. I've been told that it's a very aggressive one of the
Hmm.
more serious ones, and I've had a lot more doctors tell me, you. I have a friend who is married to a neurologist, and he's told his wife last November, it was right before Thanksgiving. He said she should have gone several months ago. And I had someone tell me that 2 weeks ago that I shouldn't
Wow.
have been last year.
You
And
need to write a
especially,
book or something.
honestly, and I feel great. I think that's what it is because I look like nothing's wrong and I feel amazing.
Hmm.
Um, I still am working through my issues and I've seen it on screen. So I know that it's there. And I do have my little reminders here. And I can tell my body is a little bit weaker than it would have been, than it was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Um, but a lot of the therapy, it's really a full time job if you
Yeah.
want to go the holistic route. Not only is it a full time job, but it's a lot of money. When I started seeing a holistic doctor in September, October time, she said, "Are you ready for this? Because it's going to be hard work, full time, and it'll cost you about $150,000."
Hmm.
And I said, "Well, I guess I got no choice, so I'm all in."
Wow.
And so I have sought out naturopath doctors who have said that this route works. I personally haven't, sat down with somebody who went this route and is a survivor, but I hope to change that and really bring awareness that you can do a lot for your body. And even if you're going to now, I'm not saying that that route is not the right route
Hmm.
for other people. It wasn't the right route for me.
Right.
But even if you go that route to really build your body up and your immune system, and do some of the things you can do can get you through it a lot easier.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, so
definitely.
I am seeking um, holistic treatment outside of the country because it is more aggressive,
Hmm.
and they don't offer it here in the United States. And
Ah,
so
I see.
I'm willing to go and
Yeah.
see what's
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah. Well, you know what? You're the first person we've had on our show that's taken a holistic approach, and you're just living proof that it works, and that prayers work, do happen. We are so honored to have you on our show. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story with the people of Guam. And I'm sure that many people are very inspired by you, by your story, your resolve, your determination to fight this, and for your children as well and your husband. So thank you so much. And I know you do have a GoFundMe account. Um, we will post those details after we come back from break, so that anybody who wants to help you out, because this is an expensive journey, and we understand that. So hopefully people who are watching this will go check that out. But Jolene, again, thank you so much for your story, your very inspiring story. Please say hello to your husband and your children, and maybe one day we'll meet your beautiful little boy, who survived this miracle with you. So again, thank you so much, and we hope to talk to you soon. We'll be right back
Thank
on My Story. All right, well, that's it for this episode of My Story. But as promised, here is a link to Jolene's GoFundMe account. That's www.gofundme.com/JoleneUmpinko. After our Skype interview, Jolene also asked me to thank each and every one of you for tuning into this episode, most especially to her family and friends on Guam who prayed for her and supported her through her journey to fight this disease. From all of us here at My Story, thank you. Adios.